you guys, welcome back to Flickers of Fear. We're talking about an absolute classic on today's show, the 1955 horror thriller known as Diabolique. Now, it's actually only known as Diabolique in the US. Everywhere else in the world, as far as I'm aware, it's known as Les Diaboliques, plural. And so that actually translates as the devils or the fiends, something like that. And this is one of those movies where I kind of feel like if you're a horror fan at all, like any kind of serious horror fan, you should see it at least once, preferably twice, I'm going to say, because I think kind of the famous twist at the end of the story, it's one of those things that it recontextualizes like everything that you saw like up to that point. So it's like really instructive to watch it a second time after you know what the twist is, so you can kind of like see all the seeds that were planted and stuff like that. It's really neat to do that. Now, this movie was actually sort of loosely based on a 1952 novel called She Who Was No More. And this was written by a writing team who did a lot of suspense novels named Pierre Boileau and Thomas Narkajak, I think is how you pronounce this. That's actually a pen name. That's not his real name, but that's the name that he wrote under. Now, what happened with this novel was that the novel came out and Alfred Hitchcock actually wanted to buy the rights to it. But before he could do that, like at a last minute thing, the rights were actually preemptively snapped up by the French producer, Henri-Georges Clouzot. Now, he wanted to make this movie as a vehicle for his actress wife, Vera Clouzot. Now, this movie actually turned out, as I said, this is a classic. It's a suspense classic. If you haven't seen it, this is definitely one of the ones that you need to see. And it's so, in film circles, it seems like it's so tremendously admired that it's been remade like a whole bunch of times. There was a 1974 TV movie that's an adaptation of it that's called Reflections of Murder. There was a 1993 TV movie that's called House of Secrets that was also an adaptation of the same story. And it also got like a big budget kind of Hollywood remake in 1996 with Sharon Stone and Isabella Gianni. And Chaz Palminteri was in it too. And I think also Kathy Bates was in it too. And not only that, so not only has the story been remade multiple times, but the way the story is, like the plot points and stuff, have been homaged in like several other films like Death Trap and stuff like that, and like some other TV episodes like Twilight Zone and whatnot. Matter of fact, Robert Bloch, the guy that wrote the novel that Psycho was based on, actually named Diabolique as his favorite horror film of all time. And it has actually been speculated, I don't know if this is true or not, but this is kind of how the story goes, that Alfred Hitchcock failing to get the rights to this book, like to make this movie, in the 1950s actually directly led to him opting to do an adaptation of Robert Bloch's Psycho instead, and then the rest was history. Now, in its execution, Diabolique does have a very Hitchcockian vibe to it, but that shouldn't be a surprise because the original book's authors were big Hitchcock fans, and I think that they wrote the novel specifically in the hopes that he would buy the rights and adapt it. Now, incidentally, Alfred Hitchcock, even though he didn't do this one, obviously, he did actually end up adapting one of their novels later on, because their book, From Among the Dead, was actually turned into his 1958 movie, Vertigo. So there you go with that. But I have to say that the director of this movie, Henri-Georges Clouzot, he brings his own sensibility to Diabolique, and it's just kind of like this very bleak, very haunting story, and it's kind of like a classic suspense plot where like the perfect murder but like gone horribly awry, you know what I mean? So Vera Clouzot, she's kind of the main character, and she plays Madame Christina de la Salle. And she's very, very wealthy. You're led to assume that she's from like a wealthy family or whatever, but she's a very, very physically delicate woman. She's originally from Venezuela, and she owns this kind of somewhat run-down, kind of second-rate boys' boarding school just outside of Paris. Now, she also has this shitbag of a husband named Michel, who's played by Paul Maurice, and he kind of acts as the school's principal. Everybody at the school, staff and children alike, are justifiably terrified of him because he's just this very cruel, authoritarian dickhead. You know, he seems like power mad type of thing, and he's just like cruel for no reason, just because he can be. And he treats the kids there and the staff like as badly as he treats his wife. Like, he's just a real fucking dickhole to her, like, at all times. Now, the wife also, she has like a heart condition, like, so she's, like I said, very physically delicate, and he's constantly like mocking her, being like, yeah, I wish you'd hurry up and die, blah, 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 like all that kind of crap. So, you know, he's a real peach. Now, also suffering alongside Christina de la Salle is another woman named Nicole Ornay. Now, she's actually played by Simone Signoret, and she's a teacher at the school also. She's like the math and science teacher, and she's also Michelle's mistress. Now, Nicole has been on the wrong end of Michelle's fists many times, it would seem. And although it's implied that the two women were enemies at first, as would be expected, like, given the circumstances, because one was like fucking around on, you know, on the wife or whatever. But after they kind of like met and hung out, they've subsequently bonded over their mutual hatred of this motherfucker. Now, it should be noted, too, that, like, all of their dirty laundry, pretty much, I mean, this is, like, not a big school. This whole sordid affair with, like, him having the mistress and him being abusive and all this other kind of stuff is kind of like an open secret around the school. Like, everybody seems to know, like, yeah, he's knocking down that woman, and also he's, like, punching the shit out of her and stuff like that. So everybody knows, like, what's going on, but no one really does anything about it. You know what I mean? It's that kind of situation. So Nicole, the mistress, who seems like a lot more, she's very kind of, like, severe. She's very no nonsense. And she has come up with a plan to do away with Michelle for good. And if everything goes as intended, like as she planned, then his death will look like an accident. Now, what she has kind of imagined, she needs Christina on board for this whole scheme to work. However, Christina at first does not really want to get involved. I mean, she's kind of like mousy and cowed. She's not physically like really up to it because she's, like I said, her health is very, very like physically fragile. And she's also like really, really religious. Like, she's really Catholic. So she thinks that, you know, anything that they do like that is going to be a sin and that she's going to hell. Like, she really does actually believe that. So she's very reluctant to go along with this, even though she does despise Michelle and wish he would like just drop dead already. However, after he essentially tells her like right to her face that it's like, hey, I'll be glad when you drop dead and I can have all your money, like, you know, I can take over the school and like take all your money, she pretty much like changes her tune and she's like, yeah, so now she not only wants to off the fucker, but she's like, yeah, I just regret that he won't be alive to like know that I'm the one that did it, you know what I mean? So the primary stages of the mission go pretty much as planned. Christina and Nicole, they go to Nicole's place. Like, she owns this, she lives in an apartment and then she like rents out like the top floor or whatever. Like, and it's a few, I don't even remember, I think he said it took like 10 or 12 hours like drive. So it's like pretty far away. So they go there like and stay with Nicole like over the holidays. There's some like holidays coming up. I don't think it's Christmas or anything, but it's like some school holiday, like spring break or some shit. So they go there for a few days. And then Christina calls Michelle, her husband, and essentially like lures him there by saying, hey, guess what? I'm filing for divorce and I'm going to sell the school, which means he's not going to have any money or job or anything like that, you know, henceforward. Now, just as the women predicted he would do, Michelle, you know, is like, I'm coming down there, but he sneaks out of the school, like, in order to catch the train and get there because he has this massive, massive ego, and he doesn't want anybody at the school, like the staff, like, to see him leaving the school and quote unquote running after a woman. Like, that would look really bad, like, if he did that. So, and they're, you know, like I said, they know him, so they know that that's exactly what he would do, and that's what they wanted him to do because they didn't want anybody to see him leave or know where he went to. So once he gets to the town where Nicole lives, like on the train, the women drug him with alcohol, like they buy some kind of nice booze and they lace it with this untraceable sedative. So they, you know, they roofie him essentially, they make him go to sleep, and then they carry him into the bathroom and drown him in the bathtub. So the next morning, they actually load his carcass into this big wicker basket that they brought along that they said had a bunch of dishes in it. And then they drive it back to the school. and they get there like in the middle of the night because, like I said, it's like an all-day drive. You know, at that point, they kind of take the basket out to the pool out back, and they dump his body in the school's gross-ass swimming pool, which is just filled with this filthy black water. Like I said, it's kind of like a second-rate boys' school. Like, this doesn't look like it's very well maintained or cleaned or anything. So the pool is just like full of this gross, like yucky black water. So they dump it in there. They're kind of hoping that when the corpse inevitably rises to the surface, the staff will just assume that Michelle just got, you know, shit-faced drunk one night and then wandered and fell into the pool and drowned, and it was an accident. So this seems like a foolproof plan for sure. And like I said, everything is kind of just going according like it's supposed to. But there's one little snag. Several days go by and the body never surfaces. Christina, who is already quite fragile and is now like pretty racked with guilt that they've actually done the thing, is really like having a hard time. Like, she's jumping at shadows, she's acted like all sketchy, and Nicole is like afraid that she's just gonna crack up and blow the whole deal and like tell somebody just because she feels so guilty and so freaked out. So the women can't really set their minds at ease by having the pool drained, because just asking about it, hey, might want to have that pool drained and see what's going on with that, you know what I mean, that would be like super suspicious, like they knew something. So they have to kind of use these real roundabout means to get the job done. It's like, oh, look, I'm throwing some of my keys and oops, I dropped my keys into the pool, kind of thing. Like, maybe we should drain it so I can get my keys back, just so to put their minds at rest, like somebody needs to find this fucking body, right? So they do that, and then the pool gets drained, like the maintenance guy drains the pool, but they find to their surprise that Michelle's body has somehow done a runner and is no longer in the pool where they're pretty sure they dumped it. Not only that, but the suit that he died in, like that he was wearing when they killed him, is actually like the dry cleaner like brings it back to the school the next day, like, hey, here's that suit like that so-and-so dropped off or whatever. And they're just like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? And also one of the students, like one of the boys, claims that he saw Michelle, like the principal, that same day, and he's like, yeah, he yelled at me and like took my slingshot because I broke a window. And they're like, yeah, but he's missing, like he's not here. And the weird thing is, like, the staff, they know that he wanders off and he's like out like hitting all the ladies, you know what I mean? So they're just like, they don't think it's that weird that he hasn't showed up for several days. And like I said, it's been kind of like a vacation too, so they're not really all that worried about it. But yeah, this kid was like, I know I saw him, and they, you know, put him in the corner for lying and all that other kind of shit. There's also the small matter of they take, like, the photographer comes and does like a faculty and student group photo that may or may not have like a weird, ghostly, blurry kind of image of Michelle kind of peering out of one of the school's windows, like in the background. So you're kind of led to believe, like, you know, has Michelle perhaps like returned from the grave, like as a ghost or a revenant or something like that, in order to take revenge on the women that killed him? Or is there something even more insidious going on? Now, I feel like the plot twist of Diabolique will probably be familiar to most people nowadays, as it's quite famous and it has been done several times in other movies since then. But even knowing the twist ahead of time, it doesn't really do anything to diminish the movie's like suspense or like the spooky power that it has. I mean, also, and the iconic scene too, like toward the end, that always gets shown on those like scariest movie scenes videos that you see on YouTube and that Bravo did and stuff like that. That scene is still fantastic and really effective this many decades later. And I have to say too that like the entire outcome of the movie, like how it ends, is just so deliciously cruel that it's really hard not to love it. It's also really hard to overstate how influential this movie was on the suspense genre in particular. I mean, I already mentioned how it influenced Psycho, but it was also like a big acknowledged precursor to Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, which also came out in 1960 and was a big influence on Roman Polanski's early films as well, particularly like Knife in the Water and some of his other like early films from the 60s. Interestingly, the movie does a gender swap on one of the main characters from the source novel. Like in the book, the intended murder victim, like the one they're trying to kill, is the wife, not the husband. And also the movie adds that whole boarding school setting, because that wasn't in the book either. And the book, it's kind of, I feel like the motive was more like, we're gonna get the life insurance payout, and they don't really do that in the movie. I think because the director thought that was like kind of a boring angle, so he wanted like a more interesting motive. The end of the novel is also somewhat darker than the ending of the film. I mean, the film ending is pretty dark, like, don't get me wrong, but in the book, like, the villain basically kind of like gets away, whereas that's not exactly how it goes down in the movie. Also, as an amusing footnote, I found this very funny. Diabolique may have been one of the first, if not the first, movie to feature what's essentially like an anti-spoiler message, like at the end of the movie. And basically it's admonishing viewers, like if you sat through the whole movie, they're like, please don't ruin the twist for your friends that haven't seen it yet, like in case they want to see it. So, you know, don't be an asshole, pretty much. And I thought that was very funny. That might very well be the first movie that did that. And more famously, probably a similar warning would appear in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, which came out 5 years after this. So it might have been, again, like very influential in that regard. It's very, very tense. It's beautifully shot. It's really, really wonderfully acted. And I feel like it's one of those classics that still holds up to this day, like, at least in my opinion. So anybody at all that has any, you know, if you like Hitchcock movies, if you like suspense movies in general, or if you just like are into horror movies and want to see like where some of the tropes came from, like, if, you know, if you're into film history in that sense, then this is definitely one that you absolutely need to see. It's kind of like required viewing, I feel like, for horror and suspense fans. So if you haven't seen it, you probably should get around to it. And if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it. Also, let me know if you've seen the 1996 remake, which I think I did see, but I remember it not being all that great, although I haven't seen it recently. But let me know what you thought of that if you saw that as well. So, you know, we'll have a discussion about it in the comments. And that will do it for this installment of Flickers of Fear. I will see you guys again on the next one. Bye.